All right, episode 5 of the Daily Grind Golf Podcast. This is going to be a LIV Las Vegas preview show, and we will just get right into it. I want to first start talking about some of the pros and cons just in regards to LIV in general. And I'm going to start with the pros or the positives. So, John Rahm, obviously a very big positive for LIV Golf. Played pretty well last week, and I think he's going to play pretty well every week, if not really good, and win a couple of these tournaments. And when you think about last week, he obviously did not win. And I'm wondering if that was actually more of a win for Liv than not than if he would have won. If John Rahm would have won that tournament last week, I think you have a lot of people that were on the fence about Liv jumping off of that fence back toward the PGA, because then they just have this idea that, oh, look at this, John Rahm, one of the best players in the world, finally Liv has one of the best players in the world, and first tournament he wins. And then he goes out and let's say he wins Vegas. Then you have all these people saying this league is no good. The players aren't good. They finally have the best player. He's dominating. And that is not what happened. And I don't foresee that happening. And I think John Rahm not winning that tournament is actually better than John Rahm winning that tournament. It gives people a little bit more of perspective in terms of how these other players on Live are doing when they're now going up against one of the top players in the world, which is John Rahm. And I think that was good to see last week that these guys are very good golfers. I mean, Sergio Garcia beat John Rahm last week in a live golf event. That just is crazy. And we'll get to see, and it'll be very interesting to watch how these tournaments go for John Rahm and everybody else. And I just think that in regards to Liv getting John Rahm, and then in regards to Liv picking up Hatton and picking up Moronk, even though Moronk didn't play good at all last week, man, I think that just pushed him over the edge a little bit in terms of really having a good roster of guys. It just made it more interesting enough to, I think, start to get people to kind of at least consider it, think about it, talk about it, and start to see both sides at least just a little bit more equally, not equally, but a little bit more equally. So I think that was a big win for Liv, and a big positive for Liv is John Rahm and the fact that he actually didn't win last week. Now, Legion 13 did win. I think that was pretty cool. I'm still just, I don't know how to translate or interpret the teams thing yet on Liv, but I thought it was cool that they did go out and they dominated the team aspect. And I feel like they're going to do that multiple times this year. They just have a great team with at least three of the four, two of the four for sure with Rom and Hatton. And I think Caleb Surratt is going to play good at times. And I think Kieran Vincent is going to play good at times. So that'll be very interesting to watch. But just a huge win for Liv to get those last three guys that they did before the start of the season. It will be interesting to see how John Rahm handles some of this Liv stuff, though, throughout the season, because he seemed to get pretty frustrated a couple times last week. And the frustration always seemed to have to do with the golf, the louder golf, I guess. Golf, but louder. I don't know what to make of the music. I understand that they're trying to have this different appeal toward a younger crowd or a different crowd or a party crowd and not be this boring golf. But I just don't know what the music does for the golf. If they want to have music and they want to have a club type environment, maybe you have an enclosed club and people can go party there if they want to during the live events. But the music on the course, I don't know what it really does for the broadcast or for anybody. I know some people say it's different in person than it is on TV. It doesn't do anything for me on TV other than just nothing. But when Ram did get frustrated a couple times last week, he kind of looked over, maybe somebody was moving around, maybe somebody was doing something, but then there's also the blaring music in the background, and then there was also the not playing great at times, and I think all three of those things factoring together was what was really frustrating for him. It'll be interesting to see how that goes this week in Vegas, because I could only imagine it's going to be golf, but even louder than louder before in Vegas. It'd be very interesting to watch. And then also, the post round interview with Ram, when I watched that last weekend, he was almost speechless for a little bit of time. I think he was taken back just a little bit, that he was like, oh, yeah, I signed this contract and just got all this money. And it's kind of up to them now what appearances I make and when I have to talk and where I have to talk, regardless of how crappy I just played or how good I just played. And when they did an interview with him immediately when he walked off of the 18th green, he was definitely not ready for that. At least that's what it looked like in my mind. So it'd be interesting to see how those go in the future too. I'm sure he'll get a little more used to it, but it's definitely some of this live golf, but louder and more of a player presence with interviews and social media and stuff, that it seemed like he was a little taken back at times and had to kind of regroup in his brain and be like, oh yeah, this is what I just signed up for. And then one of the other big pros of live, I think, is that we know who's going to be there, and it's going to be everybody. There is no question as to who's there, who's not there. It's everybody. There's nobody getting cut. We know all the players. There's no questions. It's almost nice because it's like a little less to worry about and a little less that we don't need to talk about it. We don't need to talk about which players are deciding to play in this event or which players are not playing because there's a bigger event next week. They're all there. And I think that's all we need to say. You can see here some of the groupings. And one thing they're actually doing differently is this like live, I can't remember if it's live golf plus or live X, where the fans can go on and vote to determine like which captains will play together. And it looks like that's what they've done here, because this actually looks pretty cool. Group 1, hole 1 is Waco Neiman, Bubba Watson, Sergio Garcia. Hole 2, John Rahm, Brooks Koepka, DeChambeau. And then hole 3, Cam Smith, Johnson Hatton. I mean, these are awesome groupings. I didn't actually see this until I just pulled up my screen now. Another big win. You know who's going to be there. They're getting the fans involved to actually determine who's playing together. That's pretty cool. I like that. And then when you get to go on and watch on the CW or the app or wherever you're going to watch, and you get to watch your group that you actually voted for to have put together, that's pretty cool. And then one other thing, I think a pro in regards to the team aspect is this new idea of having all 4 players in the third round count toward the team score. I'm still trying to figure out, like, why not just have all the scores count and all the rounds for all the team score and just truly figure out 100% which 100%, like 100% of this team versus 100% of that team versus 100% of that team, like which team played best completely through the whole entire tournament. I know they added this third round, all 4 scores count this year. So I think that's a little better than just having 3 scores count for all 3 rounds. But I think that's another positive, is getting more scores counting toward the team scores. But then we'll talk just a little bit about Las Vegas Country Club. So I think one of the negatives or one of the cons that Live has going for them right now is the venues. And not that they're bad venues, but that they're new venues. They are going up this week against Phoenix, the Phoenix Open. It's TPC Scottsdale, and there's history behind it, and there's kind of a culture behind it. And not only are people there to watch the players, but they're there to see the players play on certain courses. And people are familiar with the courses and they like things, excuse me, about the courses, or there's things they don't like about the courses. When it comes to Live Las Vegas, I don't know anything about this course. I was looking at this website last night. It's the first time I've looked at this website. First time I've really laid my eyes on this course. The PGA Tour used to play there, I don't know, 30 years ago or something like that. But the venues, I say, are a negative because there's no history behind it. So I'm excited to see certain players play, but I don't know what we're going to get with the course. I can just look and see kind of what it looks like to get an idea of what might work best, in regards to which players and where their strengths are. But the courses leave a little something to be desired. But if they continue to go back to similar courses year in and year out, I think it'll get better. But so far, they've done, I think, a fair bit of moving around on courses. Last year, they played in Chicago. I was trying to get to that event, but wasn't able to get off work. And I was hoping it was going to be there again so I could go see what this course in Chicago looks like and I could get familiar with it and I could see it again next year. But that course now this year is not in the mix. So it's a little bit disappointing there. But let's just talk about the course a little bit. It's 7,200 yards. I think accuracy is going to be key. Now, like I said, I don't know much about this course, but I know it is 7,200 yards. I know there's a lot of trees. I know there's a lot of bunkers, and I know there's water. So I'm going to say accuracy is going to be number one. Mm, and then I'm just gonna I have a tendency to some people are when you're talking, I'm not a betting guy and I haven't dug into a ton of data yet, but I'm trying to do more of that. I just always think putting is key. Last week, there were a lot of guys like Brooks was one of them who just he wasn't making enough putts. He was just missing here and just missing there. DeChambeau, Bryson was kind of doing the same thing a little bit. I think whoever is just best on the greens is going to do really good. So I think if you can mix accuracy off the tee and putting especially, I think you're going to be doing really good. Now Waco Neiman had like greens in regulation was top of the list last week in terms of stats. So that's obviously going to be a huge help as well. But I'm going with accuracy off the tee as my number one factor this week. And then another thing, in regards to Vegas, not necessarily the course, but we're in Vegas. So these guys are in Vegas the week of the Super Bowl for a reason. Everybody's in town and they are going to use that to their advantage. And I'm very curious to see, the social media stuff on Live is pretty good. And I'm curious to see what that turns into this week in Vegas. What is this? What is the social media? Excuse me. What does the social media content look like? What celebrities do they get involved? How do they, I guess they won't really be tied into the Super Bowl at all, but it'll be very interesting to see what Vegas brings for Live the week of the Super Bowl. I think they got two really big weeks back to back. I think it'd be a fantastic start for Live to have the PGA Tour cancel last week, have Sunday all to themselves, have a big playoff. It was the first round for John Rahm. And now they got LIV Golf in Vegas, Super Bowl weekend also in Vegas. Just really, really good stuff. But this year they're going up against, or this weekend they're going up against the Phoenix Waste Management, which is obviously a big PGA Tour event. It'll be interesting to see the numbers afterwards. PGA Tour always has more viewers at this point in time, but it'll just be interesting to see what some of those numbers are this next week. They mentioned some numbers. I forget what the site was where I was seeing some of these numbers on X. But the PGA Tour numbers are better than LIV and the CW. The nice thing about LIV, and the nice thing for me this weekend, is that I can only watch PGA on my TV. And I don't have any streaming services. So whatever couple of hours of golf they want to give me on Saturday and Sunday, that's all I get to watch. And then when one of my family members is here and wants to watch TV, I don't tell them no, because I'm going to watch golf. If they want to watch golf with me, that's fine. But I can be outside with the kids, or I can be outside, looking for more deer antlers, and I can have the app open on my phone in my pocket and be streaming LIV Golf. So they just have more viewing options. They have the CW, they have the app, they have the website, and there's just more options, and I can watch it anywhere I want. And it's really nice. And if I don't get to watch it, then I can just watch it on the website afterwards. I can turn it on and watch the whole entire thing kind of on demand. So that's really, really nice. The numbers are lower than PGA. Sure, that's fine. I don't think that'll change for some time, but it's just nice to have more viewing options in my pocket, on my computer, on the TV. It's nice. I think they have better things going there in terms of viewership overall than the PGA. Not the numbers, but the options. They're also going up against the Qatar Masters, the DP World Tour event this week. Um, but yeah, I think that's enough there. Let's talked about the field, obviously. We talked about the golf course, what they're going up against, numbers. Let's talk about odds. So this is CBS? Yeah. These are just some odds I saw on CBS. Excuse me, John Rahm is 4.5 to 1. I feel like, man, is John Rahm just going to be at the top of the leaderboard for odds for the majority of these events? I'm not sure, but I think different websites have different odds as well. But this is what we're getting: Las Vegas odds for the field. John Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton, Waco Neiman, Taylor Gooch, Cam Smith, Bryson, Brooks, Dustin Johnson, Dean Burmester, Sergio, Patrick Reed. You can see the list on the screen. It goes on and on and on. Kind of curious to see who's way down at the end here. Phil Mickelson plus is 300 to 1. Hudson Swafford 500 to 1 at the end. So it'll be interesting to see. I could only imagine John Rahm's going to be pretty darn close to the top of that list most weeks. But I'm going to make a couple I'm going to make a couple guesses, a couple estimates. I'm going to say Brooks wins this tournament. I think that if we look at the stats just from last week, I'm not totally certain the best way to find stats on LIV guys yet. Still a little new to the LIV thing, still working on that. But last week, Brooks number 1 in driving accuracy. And I think if he can do that again this week, I think he's going to be up there the whole time. Last week he just played okay golf. I think he finished third last week in my Coba, but just great accuracy off the tee. And I think he wins this tournament. And I think it's also fitting for Brooks to win in Vegas. I just like the idea. I think a top five pick, I think Rahm is always going to be a great top five pick. I just think he's going to do well in these tournaments all the time. I think he's the best player on LIV, clearly. And I think he's going to be a top five guy. And then I just have to piggyback off of last week. Joaquin Niemann was third in fairways hit. He was first in greens and regulation. I think if he can do that and avoid the hazards, I think he is absolutely going to just do awesome in this tournament. Also, second in driving distance last week. So I think if you can hit the ball accurate, if you can hit the fairways like Joaquin Niemann was doing last week as well, he was third in fairways hit last week. If he can somewhat mirror his numbers last week in terms of stats, he's going to do awesome. But I think Brooks wins this. A top five pick for me would be John Rahm, and a top 10 pick for me is going to be Joaquin Niemann. And I think that's about it. In terms of teams, I would guess that Legion 13 wins this week again as well. I'm very curious to see how many weeks they end up winning. I think overall, they've just got just such a strong team. Caleb Surratt really proved himself last week, and hopefully he can do the same this week. Kieran Vincent, a little bit of a wild card there, but also clearly able to play under par at times. And if he can stay somewhat close to par or slightly under, I think the rest of the team will carry him through. And I think they're going to end up winning a lot of team events this year. And then what else? I think that's somewhat it. One thing I was going to say is that this LIV Lessons is official. It just went live. The first LIV lesson is with Cam Smith. Just posted to YouTube a couple hours ago. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool, and it looks like it's essentially a 10-minute putting lesson from Cam Smith. I've never seen the PGA. I guess I shouldn't say that, but this stuff looks like they're going to just blow the PGA out of the water in terms of content, good content with the players that you want to see, camera in their face, getting information from them, being entertained by them. And I'll watch this and kind of see what that looks like. But yeah, LIV lesson number one is up on YouTube on the LIV Golf channel. One last thing that I will mention is just talking about other podcasts. I think, we talked about how last week, big week for LIV. We talked about how this week is going to be a big week for LIV. But one thing that I kind of caught a theme of this week on multiple other podcasts, some people are still just like, LIV is just the disruptor. It's kind of no good. Just totally not on board still. And that is completely fine. But I did see or hear multiple podcasters, at least it seems like at the same time that I kind of just was like, what is there something going on with this whole LIV thing? They suddenly just much more interested and interested enough to start my own podcast. And these guys are just like, I'm curious. I'm curious about what happens this week. I'm curious about how much of this steamrolls when they then have 2 weeks off, or it's either 2 or 3 weeks off before their next event in March. But what happens in Vegas? What happens with the ROM? What happens with the team? There's a little more curiosity out there, and there's a little more talking about it out there. Nobody's still really breaking down the events that I hope to continue to do just on a round by round basis. But at least there's a little more sizzle, a little more talk, a little, just a slightest bit more maybe optimism of like, hey, this last deal or the last few months of getting Rahm and getting Hatton and getting Maroc like really topped off Live in terms of the roster. They got one of the best players in the world. The fields are really looking better this year than last year, and it's just more interesting suddenly. In Vegas should be another great test and trial to see how this is really going. But I think we'll leave it there for now. Don't forget, Live Golf starts tomorrow. We go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that's it. And then we'll have Super Bowl on Sunday. Should be a great 4 days of sports for Live and the NFL and the PGA and the DP World Tour, and just a very, very exciting week. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we will see you next time.